Attorneys need therapy too.
I don't do therapy.
Tourette's.
Do I have that?
Baker Act.
Have we done one of those?
Maybe.
Oh, no.
My mom didn't hold me enough when I was a kid. Welcome to another episode of Attorneys Are Human Too. I'm Steve Wallace.
And I'm Celena Muzic.
We have a special guest. We're taking you back to the Twilight Zone, 2020. It's episode number 1. We're bringing back a very dear personal and professional friend of mine, a therapist, Michael Berger.
Hello, greetings. I'm so happy to be back. I want to say this the same thing I said in the first episode, that the title of this podcast, Attorneys Are Human Too. It's not just a catchy title. I can actually vouch. It's true. Attorneys are human too.
And
thank you for that.
The beautiful thing about this episode, we brought you back. We get to see each other, and we're all in the same room, which is
it's not COVID anymore.
5 years ago, we met virtually.
Yeah.
What a different time that was.
Yeah.
It sure was. We started this podcast because we actually wanted to talk to other human beings, and it was really
we were feeling isolated.
Right. It started as a passion project, but now we thank all of our listeners, and for our listeners, we're towards the end of the episode, we are going to introduce a new segment called Ask an Attorney Anything, and we have solicited listener questions, and you are going to be our test dummy for the first one, and we have a great listener question, and so that's how we're going to. So
I like that.
We want to dive into an analysis of the mental health and the psyche of a professional. Obviously, we're lawyers, but we can broaden it out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I guess my first question, and we love to jump in and add our own antidotes. Mm-hmm. What would you say are qualities of a successful professional on a professional level?
Yeah, we say success is subjective, but I'd say that most of the professionals that I meet that would describe themselves as successful would start talking about a certain amount of income that they're earning each year. They talk about maybe the home or homes that they have, the material items. They talk about investments that they'd have. You can also tell many successful professionals with how they're carrying themselves, right? There's a certain air of confidence that many successful professionals have, and they really tend to be, right? I don't want to generalize. They tend to be like highly motivated and really driven individuals who are always mindful of the goals that they're having professionally, whether it's 1 year out or 5 years out. They can just clearly communicate what they're up to in their lives.
So on that vein, obviously they're seeing you.
Yes.
For a reason, for the opposite reason. They may have business success or professional success, but let's dive a little bit into the challenges that they have in their personal life.
Because I have a theory. I feel like those highly motivated are lacking so many other things. And sometimes I think the motivation and the confidence is a facade.
Yeah. And what, I'll tell a lot of them that like one of the aspects that is like an asset for them that has been a contributor to so much success in their life, relationally and personally, is a liability, right? If they are all or nothing thinking and very into numbers and logic, that's really served them well as business owners. But in a relationship, when you're having there's emotional needs that they're being asked to meet, that same characteristic is now a liability. It makes it harder to connect with someone at home.
Well, I think one thing to add, at least I can just provide from my own personal experiences.
Yeah.
We go to, as an attorney, we go to law school, and this is the blessing and the curse. We are trained to think like a lawyer, act like a lawyer, analyze like a lawyer, be removing ourselves personally from the situation. And that's great for work. The problem is that through my lifetime, I've had challenges at times with personal relationships, romantic relationships, based on that fact. And I've had an ex-wife tell me, and that's underline, highlight, bold ex-wife, that stop acting like a lawyer at home. And when I was a younger attorney, it was a major challenge for me. And that's one of the things that I self-reflect. And I've always tried to, at least certainly when my children were born, I've kind of transferred that where I've had the ability to turn it on and off. And Celena has the pleasure or displeasure of seeing me when it's on, but also we're very dear friends also. So she sees it when we're off.
I want to ask you, is there, it sounds like you're very intentional about this on-off switch. Was there something that you did, a choice that you made that was most helpful in making that choice to switch it on or off?
Well, I, for years upon years upon years, could never shut it off.
Yeah.
And to the point where, it was adversely affecting my personal, romantic, familial relationships. Yeah. It was really kind of a wake-up call when my son was born, and then obviously when my daughter was born. But my children have given me the motivation to be able to not act like her. Now, I'm not going to lie. Like when my kids get home from school, I put on the deposition hat and I start asking them, what'd you do at school? Who'd you talk to? How was class? What's your grade? So, I mean,
I've gotten very good at knowing when Steven is on that path to basically like stop or even go into his office. I close the door and I say, listen, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Like he laughs because he knows I've said no.
Right. Unfortunately, you have the relationship and the rapport to have that communication.
It's helpful. No, it's like she takes me off the ledge, so to speak.
And if you can, in personal lives, if there's a husband-wife relationship where they're comfortable enough to have that conversation, whether if it's the case, the husband, let's say, who's the attorney, it can invite his wife to let him know when he is in attorney mode. That's certainly helpful. But to recognize, it's almost like a whole different skill set.
Yeah.
What works, like you said, Steve, what works at work won't work at home. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The wife, again, staying with the husband-wife scenario, often is resentful and feels distant from her partner. And the husband, can't understand. And a lot of times successful professionals, not just attorneys, especially the men, because I work a lot with men. I hate to generalize, but a lot of men will say, well, but look at all the things I'm providing.
Yeah.
Look at this lifestyle I've offered you.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
But it doesn't compensate, right? I mean, on the other side, Steve is very good at telling me also, hey, you're being way too emotional about this. Or you're worrying about something that's not a big deal.
And how do you receive
this? This is work, though. We're talking about work.
I receive it. I think it's different if it was his wife saying, hey, you need to turn this off. For some reason, I think that the at home, it's different as opposed to like a friend telling you, because I also think Steven knows that I can see every perspective of the situation. So if I'm like telling him, stop it, he's like, okay, she's probably analyzed this. Maybe I need to just chill. And vice versa. When I'm like, I'm sweating and like having a whole meltdown and like, stressed out. And when he tells me, listen, you're being way too emotional, then I'm like, okay, he probably has a point. I need to just...
The other thing that's interesting is the fact that we also, as professionals, especially attorneys, we want to have an outward appearance, a portrayal of a certain way. So I'm going to give you another personal tidbit. So I met a colleague, a friend she's my friend now, at a networking event, and she was in charge of a large networking organization. And she met me for the first time, and she's like, oh my God. She goes, I'm concerned. I'm afraid of you because I have a portrayal, and it's done intentionally to be a very tough attorney. And then I went out to breakfast with her for first meeting, and she's like, oh my God. She goes, you are not how I envisioned you to be. And I go, that's intentional. I'm intentionally portraying a certain character.
Yeah.
But that's my personal character. But when you meet me and you hang out with me socially, I'm a different characterization because I feel that it's important to make a certain professional portrayal because, and that's one of the challenges, and we'll dive into that in a little bit, of what the public perceives a certain profession to be.
Well, isn't that what they say? Image is everything.
Right. But or what they expect and what they really is. And we're going to, in a future episode, peek behind the curtain of a law firm and really tell you how it is, because the public envision lawyers as a certain way. And that's why we came up with the name Attorneys Are Human Too, because you'll see that we're not necessarily what the public or what you expect out of an attorney.
Or always put together how people think.
But think about like persona, public persona, and the masks that we all wear, right, as professionals, as human beings. It's not limited to attorneys, and in some cases it serves you really well. And the professionals I work with, to our point earlier, why they have a tough time personally is because they have such a hard time in taking that mask off at home.
Yeah.
Right? They maintain that persona. And many men, again, based on my work, they have a tough time connecting with their feeling self and emotional self. So again, what they're being asked of from home is like their spouses or partners is like, I want to connect with you. I want to feel heard and safe with you. And the guys are like, does not compute. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I was terrible at that during my marriage. I'm not going to lie to you. I was horrible at that.
Right? And so that's part of the work. It's like, let's connect with, the F word, the feelings and emotions and understand.
Oh, yeah. I hate the F word.
Right.
Not feelings.
Oh, my God. I hate that.
Oh, God. The
hate
dreaded
that.
F word.
I hate it.
And in fact, I run one of the things I do in my practice is I run a men's group, and I've been doing it for 13 years now. And one of the group members, we actually have, we're lucky enough to have 2 attorneys in the group.
Yeah. Any circle jerk or ookie cookie going on there or what?
What's going on?
only if they. Oh, I got the round of applause. Okay, that's how it works.
All right. Judge Janine loves it when we get a little raunchy.
She likes the spice.
That's only for a membership, special membership fees.
Because that's not the type of organization I want to be part of. Not that there's anything wrong with
Well,
it.
there's the group, and just like Diddy, there's the after group.
That's right.
So that's where that happens.
That's right.
But,
okay, good.
One of the attorneys, he and the members who happens to be attorney, he's always playing devil's advocate, and I've given the feedback of like it seems to be really hard for you relationally to kind of take that off, and that skill, and I said that I have no doubt that skill set served you so well, like in your success, but like relationally in the moment, it's really hard to connect with you, and you always want to play devil's advocate, which I know attorneys learn how to like.
We do
both
the
sides.
Argument and the counter argument.
So that's what he does in group.
Assuming arguendo, Dr. Berger.
Yes. So that's but relationally, it creates distance and disconnect versus if I'm choosing, we'll use the F word, now the V word, vulnerability.
Oh my God.
Now I want to
have mercy.
I want to
I'm going to have an anxiety attack in a minute.
Steven's about to faint. You're saying all the words, and he's just like.
But to your point, Stephen, like to be vulnerable when your highest intent out in the public is to be this tough attorney, that is like not necessarily dangerous. That might be too dramatic, but it's going to hurt the pocketbook. You can't be perceived.
That's why he has me.
Right. That's why he has you.
Because I get a lot of, how do you work for Steve?
That's right. But that's the mentality.
And I'm always so like confused because I'm
funny.
like, what are you talking about? Steve is such a nice guy. And they're like, is he super mean to you? And I'm like, mean to me?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
What I like to do is like just to establish that persona is I like to cut a promo on somebody, just so
I do talk him off those a lot.
It's a good relationship you have, good the yin to the yang kind of situation.
I do talk him off the promo.
And so following that, over the years I primarily practice in the areas that we practice, which is real estate, business, and bankruptcy. But I've delved into some other areas over the years. Like I've delved a little bit into family law and to some other areas and litigation. But for me, I just know, and again, for my mental health, which every day I'm learning and I'm improving upon, is I try to stay out of areas that are super emotional, except for bankruptcy, because I've kind of been able to handle that. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But I like doing transactions because there's not a lot of emotions. Like we do house closings where there's a lot of emotions, which sometimes wears on you. But my bread and butter is like commercial real estate closings and also like people buying and selling businesses, because the way I look at it is I'm putting money from one hand to the other. So it's not really something where there's a lot of emotions involved. Now, bankruptcy, on the other hand, I've been called the driver of the struggle bus, so to speak. So, I mean, I grew up in Syracuse, as do you, and we'll dive into. So growing up in Syracuse, it's a very blue collar area. So we know a lot of people that probably people in Boca would not associate with. That's just the way being from a blue collar area. So even though bankruptcy is very emotional because people are at their wits' end for finances, I'm able to really, I mean, I think I do a really good job hand-holding the clients. I mean, you're amazing at it, but I'm not horrible like most people would think.
No, he's not horrible.
I'm very good. I'm actually good at it because I can relate, because those are my people. You know, people paycheck to paycheck, people figuring out where they're going to get money for the next utility bill.
But I also think that's the New Yorker in you.
Yeah.
I think growing up,
upstate New York.
The upstate New Yorker, by the way.
I'm a city girl.
Right,
I'm
so
a
you-
city
okay,
New
which
Yorker. Well, between Manhattan and then school in Queens and things like that. But
She poo-poos on us Canadians.
All city folk do
I
that.
just feel like there's a big difference when you grow up with people around you from all walks of life that it translates into bankruptcy, because you're not completely looking down on these people. And I find myself explaining that to people a lot.
I love the struggle. I love the fight every day. I love helping these people in the struggle.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they appreciate it, you know, because you're more able to empathize, which is an important skill set if you're talking about relationally. And again, this is not foreign to just attorneys. I mean, in my field, I had a colleague who for years was feeling a lot of guilt and shame because he thought, I'm not allowed to have problems because I'm a therapist. Like, what's wrong with me? And I was talking to him. I said, actually, the inverse is true. Is like, if you can connect with what's going on for you, you'll relate more deeply to your patients and be able to expose your humanity, which people really appreciate, and which sets you apart. There's probably a number of attorneys who could close a deal just as, or if not more efficient than you. But what are they going to remember?
Nobody's more efficient than me.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I was looking at your partner.
I'm going to cut a promo on you in a second.
But what do we know?
You will fear me.
What do we know?
Settle down, partner.
There's that old saying, I'll probably butcher it, but people won't remember what you tell them, but they will remember how you make them feel.
That's true.
That is true.
And
That
give
is
them
true.
a good deal on their house.
That's
But still,
right.
but how you make them feel. And then, of course, now you are strengthening a niche. Like, oh, reputation is the right. Like, there's a ton of attorney. I don't know.
I mean, I'm the captain of the struggle bus, so you know that's that's going to be my new.
So you attract other strugglers on the bus.
That's right.
Right. So, but many professionals don't realize it or aren't aware of that, and most of them are in my office because their wives like, listen, we got to do something different.
Okay.
And enough's enough.
So what would
Not
you
in all cases,
what
but-
would you say? Like, I mean, you've worked with attorneys in the past.
Yes.
What would you say? And you give us like 3 or 4, obviously without disclosing any confidential information. But what are 3 or 4 of the most common problems you attorneys seek your advice and help with?
Yeah, it's much of what we've been talking about in this podcast already. Like, how do I connect with my wife? Not understanding really what my wife needs emotionally. Understanding how to connect and verbalize like those emotions, like being vulnerable, right? How to be right, Steve. Right, I gotta be vulnerable. Like, what's like? How do I? How can I be that? That was a delayed.
Oh, yeah, that scared me. I was like, oh no.
That was censorship.
Censorship,
Okay.
yeah, on the V word.
Right.
So listen, I mean, they're highly accomplished. I'm just thinking of the ones that I've worked with. They're very bright, very logical, right, reasonable professionals or human beings, and it's that profession lends itself to that side of the brain. And they're in my office, and they're telling me that how my wife doesn't feel heard. My wife doesn't feel seen by me. How can I be more attentive to her? How do I be more patient? How do I show? And now there's another word: sensitivity.
Ugh.
Right? So boom. So sensitivity is You said 3 or 4 things. It's delayed. Come on, Judge.
Right. There's got to be a better ruling than that.
So I'd say sensitivity, vulnerability, empathy.
Okay.
3.
So I've had the pleasure or displeasure of working with a variety of different attorneys.
Yeah.
And so I've worked in large firms, mid-sized firms, small firms, my own firm. And I got to tell you, for the most part, lawyers as a whole are a bunch of crazy MFers. I mean,
yes, I would agree.
Wait, that didn't get a beep? Vulnerability got a beep?
Right,
but that's
right.
Thank you, Judge.
The 10-second delay is about 20 seconds late. So I just have met so many, and the interesting thing is, like, and I'm curious to get your take on this.
Yeah.
And we were just at an interesting location before we went back on our own. Mm-hmm. And I've met recent, and I guess there, and then also I'm part of a small firm networking group, and I'm meeting a lot of attorneys that are struggling. Mm-hmm. Like, I've never
struggling in what way?
Struggling financially, struggling mental health wise. Yeah. I mean,
that's because I'm not there.
There you go.
No, I mean, we worked with some attorneys that were certifiable, like, beyond belief, like, would have these, like, emotional breakdowns in the middle of the office. Wow. Like, I just work stiff. I'm just like, my modus operandi is I'm just there to do the work. I go in, I do the work. I'm pleasant to who I work with, but I don't have time or the desire to interact with you. Meaning, not you. I like the support staff. Yeah. I really enjoy working with the support staff, but, like, I don't really care necessarily. And that's why I haven't necessarily been the most successful when I've worked at large firms. I'm more of, like, an entrepreneurial person. Mm-hmm. And so, but I'm just not great at playing in the sandbox, so to speak.
He lacks the social part.
Right.
And that's where I spend a lot of time saying, listen, you have to participate whether you want to or not. Because just because you like people internally doesn't necessarily mean they know that. And I think that's...
But I'm really good getting I'm really good getting the clients and developing business. I'm also very good at developing referral sources. We have, I mean, the bulk of our business is referral based. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's why I was not really always that successful working in a larger firm, because I don't give a F beep about
she's abandoned the
about, you know, your crochet habit or whatever it is, or how many boats you have at your house, you know?
So I think about, like, soft skills. And on the side,
I lack soft skills.
I want to say
I'm all about.
So, and the side note, it just, like, looking at each of you, I feel like this could be a couples therapy session right now. It won't be, but but
I think the Lincoln's ghost would be pretty upset if it was couples therapy.
Bring back Lincoln's
resentful
ghost.
that I really wanted to meet him.
Right, he would spook me to death. If it was a couples therapy.
The soft skills, right? You talk about getting referrals, right? It's relationship building, how I make someone feel. And I feel sad about learning all these attorneys are struggling. I'm not one, of course, but
I think it's actually funny, but that's my...
Well, I'll tell you what because I see it a little bit different.
Okay.
And I've been in these firms with Steve. Yeah. I think there is a disconnect when it comes to the attorney being a professional and dealing with support staff or even clients. They don't understand to translate that they're just like everyone else. And that becomes, I think, a very big struggle. And, you can see that they're having issues.
I'm too much like everybody else. That's my problem.
You can see it, and I feel like they a lot of times struggle where they can't seem to put themselves in other people's shoes. Mm-hmm. And I think I am very, very good
amazing at it.
Putting myself in other people's shoes and seeing what they're seeing, and then going back and fixing what they're seeing that they don't like.
That word earlier, empathy. right? People really appreciate that. And I know the attorneys I've worked with.
I'm good at empathy.
Yeah, well, you're working on it.
I am. I'm good at it.
But no, attorneys it's a very demanding profession, right? I don't know if cutthroat is the appropriate word.
No, that's
right.
a
And
good
so
word.
imagine, to your point earlier, who do I need to be to survive in that culture, in that environment, in that world? And, I'm working 80-hour work weeks. I'm having these like high conflict conversations. It doesn't really lend itself generally for compassion and empathy, right? I got to be a killer or something like that. It's very competitive too. And so it's easy, not easy in air quotes. I'm going to just compartmentalize. I'm going to push down that feeling self, that emotional self, so I can be successful. I can measure up. I can achieve. And so you're achieving. You get the money. You're competitive, and that fills some need. But then you get home, and you have a partner who's like, I'm not looking for any of that.
Correct.
Like, when's the last time you gave me a hug? When's the last time you asked me how I'm doing?
Correct.
And then it's like, well, look at all this again. Look at the lifestyle I'm providing. Do you understand how what I do for this family?
Correct.
Yeah.
And what I do for you, and da.
Yeah.
And that causes conflict,
Correct.
to say the least.
But I also did notice in the last firm, I can see right through people. And I can see people. Yeah, it's a skill, but I saw a lot of meltdowns that weren't necessarily about work. And I'm just like, you got to be better at leaving that at home.
Yeah.
Separating it, because what you're doing is it's translating to staff, clients. And for me, the way I see it, I'm like, that's bad for business.
Like here's one thing. Obviously, I'm a real estate lawyer, so it kind of lends me to that. But I don't understand how you're an attorney, you don't own your own home. It makes no sense to me. Like, how is that even possible?
But that's your attorney side thinking, okay, that's your definition of success. Maybe that's not the definition of success for another attorney.
I don't know, because like if you and I look at your car and I see your car and I see your house, or don't own a house, I don't know. Like,
it's a lot of cognitive dissonance.
I had to
That's
jump
the
up,
attorney side of Steve.
but I had to jump up my game with my vehicle because my vehicle was like mid, and then I had to jump it up. But that's
it's part of the culture,
Right.
Western society. You think, how can an accountant be in debt? And
that's right.
That's a whole nother conversation about like what's your why? What's your motive? Who are you working for? And you're working hard to impress people that you don't like or that you'll never meet. And so that
my why is I need to fill up my day because I like exercising, but it only takes up like an hour of my day, and I need something to do between exercise and night.
Yeah, Steven is excellent, but you got to keep him busy.
I do have to be busy, because if not, I kind of go off the
and that's when he cuts promos and he gets in trouble. So I already know this, and I start telling myself, Steve's got too much time, so now I'm going to throw stuff at him.
There you go. And I think too about professionals, they tend to have the ism of like workaholism, and that work it's tough, right? Because in our society, it's very encouraged. You work hard, you get more stuff and grow, but the downside can be it's also an escape.
Correct.
I'll spend more time at work, less time at home, and I'm not gonna. And so it works because I'm avoiding the feeling that comes up when you ask me, "How's your relationship with your children?"
I mean, I know my billables were the highest when I was having problems with the ex-wife. I know that. That's true. I was like killing it.
Right, and so that served the purpose.
Yeah.
And it's reinforcing on itself, right? Because like I'm killing it, I'm making money. This is great. Meanwhile, if someone pulled you aside and like, how are you really doing, Steve? Like,
that's
you're
right.
Divorcing, your family's breaking up.
Yeah,
I'm not. Let's get back to my billables because I don't want to do the sadness, fear, shame, anxiety.
But I will say, he's been there, and I've
she
been
was through it.
That.
So yeah.
I think I was good at pulling him aside, being like, listen, you got to deal with this. You're avoiding it, and he's told me the same thing. Why? Because I am a person that when there's trouble in paradise, I will start sending emails and working at 2, 3 in the morning. And I'm just like working.
But this has nothing to do with Lincoln's ghost, okay? So don't haunt me all day.
Yeah. So, and he has told me, you need to just take a break,
Okay.
So I think we're actually good at checking
Yeah.
each
kinda
other
like a
when it
work
comes
wife,
to that.
is true,
where
yeah.
really
Except
at
I
work.
do maybe more yelling. I think maybe the wife was nicer.
No, I mean,
The wife was definitely nicer.
Well, and for, I don't know how you receive that feedback, but that's another piece that comes up for professionals is like, my wife's on top of me for this and for that. And so he has trouble again.
do I owe you for this therapy session?
Well-
Because this is very good.
Accepting.
Right.
They tend to get defensive.
Right.
Yeah.
And in their attorney mind,
Mm-hmm.
their argument's very reasoned. And it's not, they don't stop to empathize like you were saying earlier. It's more about how does she not understanding this argument about why I can't spend more time with the children.
Right. I would always leave your attorney hat at home, leave your attorney hat at work, don't bring it home. That was always what I was facing all the time,
Yeah, and it's hard. It's very hard to do that. By the way, therapists get have similar challenges. Like you need to take the therapy hat off. Are you therapizing me?
Yeah.
Is what
Okay.
I've
Are you
heard.
psychoanalyzing me?
Let's dive into that a little
Okay.
bit. So how are you?
And do you psychoanalyze?
How did you experience that with your own personal life?
Same with
Okay.
my ex and with close friends. They would literally say like, "Are you analyzing me? Are you therapizing me?" And can I actually share a funny anecdote around this?
I love
Absolutely.
funny anecdotes.
Those are my favorite kind of
because I've known this guy since
Yeah.
he's been 4 years old. You know,
it's
so
amazing.
Oh, wow.
so I don't know him as I know him as the therapist, but
Yeah.
I just know him as Mike Berger.
Yeah.
Playing,
So I
playing
was
basketball in the front yard.
One Jamar Drive.
That's right.
Yeah, you were the Pistons, right?
No, I was the Knicks. You were
You're the
you-
Knicks?
You were like
I
the
was
trail.
the Bulls.
The
I
Bulls.
was
Yeah,
always
yeah,
the
yeah.
Bulls and Pistons.
And Ariel was the Lakers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my brother.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was actually this was a real struggle for me, not taking the hat off, and so I was in a personal development program one time, and I shared a story about my experience on a banana boat, in a summer camp, and the experience was I was in a banana boat, it was two of us. We got thrown off, and then Josh went on, and I hadn't gone on yet, and he said, "Kick it," like to tell the driver to go. And as soon as the driver went, I had one hand on the banana boat, and my bathing suit flew off. So so imagine he's going on the lake, and I'm trying to hold the banana boat with one hand while trying to pull up my bathing suit with the other. And so I shared that story, and so the other group of folks that I went through this personal development program said, "Okay, whenever you're sounding too much like a therapist, we're just going to yell out banana boat." And so it was that was like a buzzword.
I like that.
You're being too much of a therapist.
Banana boat.
Banana boat. Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't unveiled that story in a long time, but that's a true story. So yeah, I just had to be mindful. So like little things, I'd say, would you like feedback? I'd ask for permission for people. But I just had to be real. It's just like you, Steve. I had to be really intentional. Like, this person is not my client. I'm not going to sit and give unasked for advice. And I've done a lot of work on it. And
So how do therapists fight with each? How did you, as a therapist, fight with your ex-wife? Like, how would you do that? Would you just I'm removing myself from the situation. I'm going to
Because
I would be like,
away
oh,
now.
no! And I just start going crazy and yelling and screaming because that's what lawyers do. Objection!
like this story comes up. Actually,
Motion dismissed.
I actually dated another therapist.
wow.
Do tell.
Please explain
Yes.
how this all went
there
down.
was one moment. If the story.
Are you
Were you
judging
guys
me?
here's the story.
psychoanalyzing?
Okay,
Was
let me
that
hear. I want to hear the story.
That was like
That's-
foreplay.
Yeah, right, that's right.
You'll edit it if it's not.
No, we love it.
So yeah, we were laying in bed one night, and
Ooh.
I was wanting
Judge
to.
Janine loves the saucy stories.
So I'll say I got enough wine.
Yeah.
You're sparing no expense on this
We are not.
podcast. So I don't know if you have any mood music, Judge, but no. So we're laying in bed, and there you go.
Yeah.
And it was going down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm wanting to initiate relations.
Okay. All right.
I knew there was foreplay
All
involved.
right, of course.
And she analyzed me. She's like, "Well, are you wanting to do this because of you're trying to avoid something? Are you wanting this because trying to do a very come up to a clinical conclusion?"
Oh no, that's a mood killer.
And and I said, "Well, no,
I don't even think Viagra will help that.
I want
Yeah.
listen. I want to. I was I was like, listen, I mean, you're my girlfriend. I want to, I want to sleep with you. No, it's not that about that at all. So that moment sticks out. Like that's the last thing that I wanted to hear.
Wow. Yeah.
But no, with my ex, I think, how did I argue? No, it was challenging because again, I'm going to use my
you're being passive aggressive. I'm going to ruin myself out of the situation. I'm going to put my head on. No, you put your head on. How are you feeling?
No, and it was hard because again, my response seemed like I would use the same kind of strategy techniques I'd use at work, and so the frustration was, how is this not working? Like I'm empathizing, I'm doing, and I'm still getting the pushback or the unreasonable reactions, and that was frustrating. At the same time, my ex wasn't my client either, right? So it's a different energy, it's a different dynamic. And it's challenging to put down those skills, right? Because therapy, it's more than just a job. It's like a way of being, like how I'm listening, how I'm understanding human behavior. So, maybe something that would come up is, she would react a certain way, and I would remind her that. Well, it makes sense. Like look who your dad was, or you're a reminder of like a childhood.
Who's your daddy? I guess that's some foreplay right there, right?
In a different way, right? Yeah. So like make the connection of like, well, clearly you're acting this way because
of daddy issues,
and to that effect, right?
Oh Lord.
So that doesn't
women hate
women.
Yeah,
hate
don't ever compare them to your daddy.
But so but it's challenging because it's like you spend your day trying to make sense of human behavior, and then your partner makes a choice, and you can make a clear link in your mind between what happened in their childhood and why they're acting this way, and it's clearly unresolved. And if they would just address it, like everything would be great.
Yeah.
And everything would be fine. And so that's like, I've got expectations, and expectations, there's a saying, are premeditated resentments. Like, right. So like,
have you ever had anyone who maybe you thought it was childhood trauma, and then it was just like, no, they're just being a jerk?
No, every time it was no. Listen, yeah, of course, it's. I mean, human behavior is complex, right? There's a lot involved around it. So people being, again, if they're in my room, in my realm, and they're gotten feedback that they're being a jerk, as a therapist, I want to explore that. Like, what's that about? And let's unpack that. And as therapists, our role is like to find meaning in everything, in all behavior. Mm-hmm. So no, you don't have to have trauma to be a jerk. You can just make that decision. I'm going to be an a-hole, right? I'm going to be a jerk because I don't like you. Or sometimes being a jerk is about being passive aggressive, right? I'm not going to be direct. I'm not going to share my direct feelings about how I feel about you. But what I'm going to do is like, again, be passive aggressive, be a jerk to you. So if I ask you on the side, like, how do you really feel about Steve? Man, Steve's an a-hole, man.
But
I've heard that before. Right. That's fuel to the fire.
But does that make sense? Like, so
I mean,
it's not necessarily trauma.
I'd much rather be booed than cheered, just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he says.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's actually true.
It's.
I like to be the heel. What can I tell you?
Okay.
I don't think so.
Attention.
That's where we're always like, no. He says that, and I'm just like, no, you don't.
I really like the dynamic you guys have created.
Yes. Okay, so we have two more questions before
we
take.
Only two more. Okay.
Before we take it. Maybe I have two more. Maybe I'm not. It's equal opportunity here.
Yes.
So first question I have for you, Michael Berger.
Yes, Stephen.
Is what led you to the career path that you're on? Because we're always fascinated by that.
I lost a bet. No. Let's see. I'm a lot of areas. So mom's a therapist, so like I was around that certainly growing up. I had always been interested in like human behavior and like even motivational speaking. There was a famous motivational speaker who was a psychologist.
Chris Farley?
Who's passed away. Not him. Wayne Dyer. Does that name sound familiar? He was a big...
Did he have a van down by the river?
He may have. Okay. He definitely had a mansion by the river.
That's good.
He did really well.
That's a good one. I'm going to look it up. Does he have any books? Because I love...
a lot of books.
I love self-help books and self-help podcasts and videos.
He had a book that...
I'm always working on myself.
He had a book called The Erogenous Zones back in the 70s or 80s that really...
Just got to take some LSD with that.
I guess so.
So I was taking psychology classes, and the goal was actually to get a doctorate in psychology. But at the time, I didn't want to be in school for as long as that would require, and I didn't want to have the debts that would come with that. So I got a master's in clinical social work, and I started just working in the field and really interested in like I said, in human behavior and the like personalities, and especially how I like the fact I could find a job that if someone's struggling or having a tough time, through what I'm telling them or through my intervention, like their life could change. They could feel so much better because I was on the receiving end of that, like growing up, like in instances where I'm feeling down, I'm feeling confused, but then I have a conversation and someone's asking me questions in such a way, and now I'm like seeing the world much differently. And it's helping me. I'm like, wow, maybe I can do that for other people. That's
a great reason.
Okay.
So that was a big contributor to why I chose the field or this role.
So, were there anybody that's ever come to you? I think I asked you this in your first appearance on our show, but I'm just kind of curious if 5 years has changed something. Has there ever been anybody that came to you and you did the initial consult with them and you're like, this person I can't help. They're just not helpable. And I had that with our marriage counselor when I was going with the ex-wife. She's like, I can't help you. You guys aren't.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, don't you want my money? No, you guys I can't help you.
It does remind me real quick. There's a therapist in the community who does comedy, and he had a joke I related to. He's like to the therapist. He said, "Have you ever been sitting in front of
Michael is a stand-up comic also. I have seen him, and he's very funny.
No way, really?
Yes.
Not actively, but
Okay.
I did pursue it at one point. But yeah, I definitely use humor.
You should do it again.
Yeah,
He's funny.
yeah. But this person therapist
He curses a little too much, but
so this particular therapist joke was: have you ever, as therapist, been sitting in front of a client and been thinking, "Man, this guy really needs professional help"? But like you're the professional.
Yeah.
So I just laughed at that. So I wanted to share that. So your answer is yes, and we offer, as most therapists do, and you may do it as attorneys, like that free 15-minute consultation call up front, like, hey, what has you reaching out and what's going on, and so we can determine pretty quickly within that first conversation before we've even met whether like it's a good fit or not. There's been a lot of cases where they'll come in and we'll have a few sessions, and then there'll be an issue that it reveals itself that I realize, this is out of my wheelhouse, and let me refer you to this person or who specializes.
what is your wheelhouse, if you could let our listeners know?
Yeah, I work with a lot of male professionals, couples work. As mentioned, I've been doing.
Why not women?
I have women on my caseload for sure. Some women have been with me for a number of years. I think a lot of times it kind of just happens organically, where a lot of clients that I attracted happened to be men. So I see men's issues, and I also work with women. I've worked a lot with like addiction and codependency, like the inner child's type work, like where I can help people like gain insight into what's gone on in their childhood, how those moments that may have been unresolved are impacting their present day life. So let's look at like what's gone on in childhood that's like continues to impact you, and let's like flesh that out and talk about it. So I'd say those areas.
At what point have you had, or you've said to yourself, okay, maybe with a client, like maybe you should just let the childhood trauma go and just move on with your life?
Tell me more about that question.
Well, like, for example, someone who is constantly repeating the same error, and then it's always, well, the excuse is always, what I went through as a child.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Unfortunately, some people are more invested in being in the problem than the solution. There's a concept like drama. Like, we always use that word, like so-and-so
Drama king or drama queen.
Yeah, right. And so one time I actually Googled that. Like, what does that mean, some of the drama? And one of the definitions at the time, it really hit home so much. And it answers your question too. Drama is someone who elicits attention through sympathy. Right? So they're not interested in it. Because if we work together and now you have this solution, that's all great, right? But there is one downside. You don't get to continue playing this game of feel sorry for me. So people are more invested in the problem. They'll go to you and say, "This is my problem," and you'll give great advice, and they'll say thank you, and then they'll go to the judge and they'll say, "Hey, this is my problem," and she'll give good advice. Okay, thank you, and then you'll go to you. So they get their needs met just by being heard. But if they fix the problem, now they can't have that relationship with you in the same way anymore.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's like a secondary gain to being invested in the problem, right, and not in the solution. Because like solution is I got to be responsible. I got to step up. I got to face things. I got to accept things. Versus if I'm all about the problem, now I get the attention from a therapist or from my friends who can feel sorry for me, and I'm getting the sympathy, but I'm not interested in solving it because now I lose that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there are conversations I've had where I'll remind the client, like, this is something that continues to come up for you. Tell me, what is it that you want? Like, I got to let them know what they're up to in their life, right? What's the game that they're playing? Yeah. Many times they may not even realize what they're doing. Well, because of what happened to me at 8, like, so yeah, you were victimized at 8, but you're an adult now. So you're not a victim as an adult. You have a choice as an adult. As a kid, we didn't have a choice.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. As an adult, you do. And I say it's your life. It's not mine. So what is it you want for your life? And this is the game you've been up to. Like you're sharing the story again and again. And how's that working for you in essence? How are your relationships? And they're this or that. All right, well, how do you want them to be? And I'll say, listen, maybe you don't want to change. And that you get to do that. That's okay.
Well, I always tell the kids that I coach, be the solution, not the problem.
Yeah. Or I think Gandhi says, be the change you wish to see, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's a concept called the drama triangle or the Cartman triangle, which is the 3 points are persecutor, rescuer, and victim, right? So I help you, and I have an expectation.
I know a lot of guys that, like, mostly older men that have younger women, they have the daddy syndrome, where they're basically love to be people's daddies.
Yeah, that too.
Right.
So the way
I find odd.
The way out of drama, or that drama triangle, the way out of drama is one way is to make a choice that you feel empowered by. Some people don't want that, and it seems odd
because it ends the drama struggle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such an enlightening episode, and I can just tell you from my own personal experiences. Therapy is through my life. It's kind of a stigma for a long time, especially in the legal profession. But there's been a big push by the Bar Association to really encourage it because we have our profession has a high incidence of alcoholism, drug abuse, and suicide. We have a lot of suicide and obviously marital problems that keeps you busy, Yeah. And so, I thank you for that. But therapy has been really good for me through the years, and it's helped out a lot. Yeah. So our final question, and this is our new segment of our show.
Final question already.
And it's almost over.
It's and it's called Ask an Attorney Anything. So we've solicited questions from our listeners, and here's the first question, and all three of us are going to answer. But we're going to start with you.
So you don't need to.
Ooh.
I love these sound effects. So I don't need to be an attorney to answer this question.
You do not.
Okay, good.
You do not.
Good.
You do not.
Okay.
So the question comes from Sean from Oyster Bay, New York.
Nice.
And he was my point guard on my high school basketball team and a dear friend and a listener. And his question is that recently there's been a big push for 50-50 financial responsibility in a relationship and a codependency of financial matters amongst the partners, either marriage or boyfriend, girlfriend, or however it is. And he wanted to know what our take was on it. So I'm going to start with you.
So he wants to know what we think of that.
What we think of that, and what our personal position is on it, and what our thoughts are.
Well, my ears perked up when you told me codependency. So right away, there's a dysfunctional, maladaptive relationship going on around the finances. And if couples are married, I recommend you want to share your finances, right? You're a team, you're one. So I'd want to know about is the communication that's been going back and forth. Are you guys upfront? Are you transparent? Is this a team that's going on? And I need to learn more about the codependency piece.
Well, what he means by that, excuse me to interrupt you, is just that I guess the old school mentality is if there's a husband and a wife, the husband's out working, paying for 100% of the expenses, and the wife is at home tending to the children and the household. So now there's been a more modern point where the expenses are 50-50 and responsibilities are 50-50.
I get. Thank you for that. I would say, every couple has their own agreement about how we're going to make this work.
Yeah.
And I'm for it if both parties are in agreement about this is what's going to work for us. That's fine. Right? What's wrong with that? Again, if each person is saying, hey, this is about how our relationship is going to work. This is the agreement, quotation, about what we're going to be up to, how this family is going to work. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Make sure, though, you're having that conversation, because a lot of times it won't work because there's assumptions going on, right? And maybe the one partner, if you're talking about the old school situation family, the wife wants to work. The husband's like, well, no, you're not working because this is just how things have been in my life and this is my view. Nothing wrong with the view, but now if I'm the wife, I'm thinking, hey, did you tell me this before we got married? Did we have this financial conversation about before we entered into this contract? And in many cases, it's no. Now it's a problem, right? Because there's been withholding, and you're not upfront about what the expectations are. So if each couple agrees that this is how we're going to make it work, God bless, that's great. But if you don't, it's going to be a conflict, and you got to hash it out.
You want me, your turn? Or you want me?
I'm gonna answer that as a woman.
Yes,
okay.
Of course.
Hey, Sean. Okay. So I am from a more modern stance. Yeah. I feel like when you enter a marriage, even before the marriage, while you're dating, and I did this with my husband. Okay. I had a very serious conversation, and I said, listen, sit down, partner. Let me tell you who I am, what bothers me, what triggers me, how I wake up. I don't always
That's
look
very
like
mature
this.
of you. And
Beyonce lied. I did not wake up like this.
Yes, true.
Okay. I look
True.
crazy. I'm cranky. I have a bad mood sometimes. I have a short fuse. Certain things irritate me. Yeah. And finances. Yeah. Very big part.
Gotta have that conversation.
And I like to stand on my own 2 feet. Yeah. My parents were always equal, financially, I always saw my mom work. So for me, and we're Hispanic, which is very unusual. And I actually, moved out and got a job, at a very early age. So for me, I'm very used to standing on my own, if I'm going to be with someone, I want to be with that person because I genuinely just want to be with that person. I don't actually need you. Yeah. And I think that sometimes shifts like the power dynamic. However, I've met people that are perfectly fine with being stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home dad. Yeah. And that's okay too, as long as you had that conversation even before you're engaged.
When I hear the term stay-at-home dad, I do the Larry David. Huh.
Yeah. But if you've had that conversation even before you're engaged, because I feel like once you're engaged, I feel like people tend to like only focus on getting married and they don't focus
they're
on
they're into the romantic idea of marriage versus the actual day-to-day and the legal responsibilities.
I think it's very important to, while you're dating, say, this is who I really am. Yeah. This is what really bothers me. And I just want you to know that. And if you're okay with seeing this side of me for the rest of my life, then we can move forward. But, if you are in that situation where it's like, okay, stay at home dad and mom's okay with it. If you like it, I love it. That's my take.
Yeah. I think my take is I'm going to give you a personal anecdote and then like a professional anecdote. So I think it's important, whether it's money or you're taking care of the children, taking care of things at home, socially. I think when you're married or you have a committed relationship, it's important it doesn't necessarily have to be financially 50-50, but it has to be 50-50 across the entire sphere of the relationship. Because there may be a scenario where, and I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say the wife has a very taxing job and she needs to put more hours at work. Theoretically, that could lead to a disproportionate amount of the income coming in. But as long as the duties are broken up, where the husband is taking care of the kids more, or doing things home, or driving back and forth things, I think it's not necessarily just we need to focus on the financial aspects of things. We need to focus on everything across the entire board. Now, what we've seen, because we see this when things fall apart, and not to a degree, we don't mess around with the family law stuff anymore. We have in the past, but from bankruptcy, we see a lot of times where what are the most common reasons why people file bankruptcy? Divorce, health issues, one of the partners dies. So it all comes to the situation where like you have to have disclosure amongst the partners. And oftentimes, and I just literally had a call when I was driving here today of an older gentleman who was retired, and he moved in with a woman. They weren't married, no legal relationship. And then the kids decided we don't want, and the female got sick, and the kid's like, he needs to get out of the house. And so as a result of that, he's calling me because like I can't afford all the bills on my own. So it's important to have financial independence, whether you're married, not married, dating, not dating. And it's really just a matter of planning. And one of the challenges that we see, especially in South Florida, which keeps us busy, is people love to live way beyond their means. The cost of living well exceeds what the income is. So, you know, I'm not evading the question or providing a solid, but I think it's important to not just focus necessarily on the financial 50-50, but focus on the duties across the board.
Yeah, and decision making for like the kids and things like that. I mean, I have just certain things that I don't want to make a decision on. And it sounds like trivial, but like ordering food. Don't ask me. Whatever you want. I don't care.
Okay.
That's just me.
And I think the bottom line is you make sure as a couple you are communicating your needs. And, you know, there's going to be, it can't be 100% 50-50 every day, you know, ebbs and flows, relationship, that's what they do. But as long as you're communicating and you're on the same page, you're taking time to check in with one another on what the agreement is of this relationship. And if we need to alter it, that's fine. Let's talk about it.
Because you don't want to judge making equitable distribution, because ultimately one of you is not going to think that distribution is equitable.
Fair. Yeah.
Right. And on a side, I want to mention, in answering the question of the three of us, I'm the only one that mentioned contract. And I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
You're entering a contract.
Yes.
I think that one of the attorneys would have said that, but the therapist.
We're human. We're too human here.
That's what it is. We're not thinking contracts.
Yes.
Okay, Judge Janine, it's about that time. We need a ruling from you.
I'm here.
That's your ruling?
What is your specific question for Judge Janine?
What is your ruling on today's episode, Judge Janine?
I think this was one of the best episodes you've ever had, and I love the vulnerability. I almost censored myself.
Right.
But I think this was a really great conversation, and I think this needs a part 2, because there's so much to unpack here, especially when it comes to what you were talking about with the attorneys and the suicide rate and the addiction, because they need an outlet too, and they're used to dealing with so many problems and so many issues that they need a therapist to talk to. They need that outlet. So there's a whole unpacking there with just that conversation.
Michael,
Pretty reasonable judge.
How do we get a hold of you? And all of your information will be in the show notes
and your
as well.
social media as well.
Well, website's therapywithmrberger.com.
Okay.
And they can reach out to me. My personal number, 561-676-3473. Not on Instagram or Facebook. So website or number would be the best way to reach out to me next time.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much. And this was the second guest spot was better than the first, and Judge Janine wants you back. So
sequels can actually be better than the original.
That is.
Yes,
that is.
yes.
It's the Empire Strikes Back.
But we need
The
you
Godfather
back.
too.
That's right.
We have so many more things to talk about.
Listen,
Yes.
I love what you guys are doing, and I'm thrilled when Steven reached out to ask me, and happy to come back anytime. This is great.
Thank you for listening to Attorneys Are Human Too. Remember, give us a 5-star review and follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your digital content.